Fun, fun. And hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Small Biz Better Summit. We are so happy to have you back. We've had some amazing sessions already today. We've talked about marketing, we've talked about profits, and now we get a special treat. We get the amazing Mr. Sean Smith, back by popular demand, joining us here again today. How are you doing, Sean? And Sean says, wait.
I was trying to mute out the sirens. So I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. They're not chasing me right now currently, or at least they can't find me. So yeah, man, I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, I'm happy to be here talking about the new year. Let's talk about what it takes to pick ourselves back up if we thought we've been knocked down, or what it takes to increase our success if we've been rolling really well. And my whole thing is really about the human. What do we need inside the human underneath the strategies or underneath the systems, right? And that's what I've spent most of my life fascinated by, and that's what I want to dissect today.
I love that, man. We are so ready for it. On the edge of our seats. I tell you, every time Sean attends one of our conferences and one of these summits, the response for Sean is just amazing. And if you are new to Sean or new to seeing Sean, you're about to see why, because he is absolutely phenomenal. Just to let you know a little bit about Sean. Sean's been in business over 20 years. He's earned and raised millions of dollars in his business, has helped several of his clients get to the 6 and 7 figure marks in their business, but even more so than the financial success. I know that's very prevalent in society, and we love those financial success, and not to take anything away from that. At the same time, Sean really is a master, as you said, of focusing on the human. What's the human, and what's the mindset behind those great earnings? What's the mindset and the human behind that great success? And how can we make sure we are solid and truly successful foundationally from an inside out approach, which is just absolutely phenomenal. I personally have grown leaps and bounds from just being a student of Sean for the last 5 years. So if you're new to Sean, you are in for a treat. If you are familiar with Sean, you already know you're in for a treat. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Smith.
And with a little further ado, let me plug my computer in to make sure that the battery doesn't die.
So while Sean is plugging in his computer, I'm doing a little song and dance.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'll try to song and dance while I plug this in, because it's right here, and then that's really kind of what we're talking about, plugging in. Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah, right. I was gonna dance.
Give a little whip and nay nay or something maybe. Oh yeah, you got the Michael Jackson dance down.
So, my screen wasn't so high. I would just show them the full moonwalk enjoy.
There you go. Right. Yeah. So what we're first going to talk about is how to start live webinars professionally.
This ain't
clearly we're not going to do that. So thank you for that, Marcus. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of the kind things that you said, and the community that you have and who you are. And today, I want to talk about the Marcus in the marketing, right? The human inside the marketing, inside the goal setting, inside the money making, inside the business, because the core of the business is the person. And it has to be that way, because if your humanity is not in your business, you're not going, in my experience and my judgment or my definition of what enjoyment really is, you're not going to enjoy your business as a content creator, a speaker, a coach. If you are the product, then you need to be in the product plan. You need to be in the business plan. You need to be inside everything of the business, because you are the product. Your thoughts, your ideas, your value from the past, all of those things are critical to bring into the business. And I think what a lot of people are doing is they're hiding behind strategies, or they're hiding behind business models, they're hiding behind rules, or hiding behind templates. And it sounds safer that way. It sounds like if we can remove ourselves from the strategies, then we won't screw them up because we don't trust ourselves, or we think we're the ones that are going to ruin everything, right? And that's usually just our own sense of self and our own limiting beliefs and all that stuff. So what we're doing is we're searching for all these fail-safe, guaranteed plans that don't have us in them. And I understand why we're looking for that, but it's a huge mistake. That doesn't mean that we don't seek out templates and strategies and game plans and coaches. All of those things are critical. It's just that they have to be wrapped around and supporting you, your humanity and your desires and your goals and your strengths and your weaknesses. If all of the templates and strategies are supporting the uniqueness that's you, then you can have a business that not only has a chance to succeed, but financially, but has a chance to succeed fulfillmently, meaning give you the joy and the fulfillment and the happiness that we're building a business for. I mean, I don't think anybody grows up as a little child and wants to be a business owner and deal with all the things that business ownership bring, unless they learned it from, their parents and they just want to emulate their parents. But for the most part, people don't want to be a business owner. They want the results of owning a business, and they want the results of owning a successful business. So whatever those results are for us, there's so much variance in not only what we want on the planet, but how to get there, right? And I think the purpose of a business is to help you enjoy life more. The purpose of a business isn't necessarily to help you bank $1 million. Now, if that's part of the plan to help you enjoy life more, that's fine, but that's not the only desired result. It shouldn't be, it can't be, because banking of money or tangible success cannot, never will, never has lead to human fulfillment. There's got to be something in our desires that are being fulfilled, in our values that are being fulfilled. And the reason this is really critical to understand is that your business might only need to generate $25,000 a year to fulfill you as a human being and to fulfill the goals. Your business might need to generate $25 million a year to generate, or to fulfill rather, your goals and your desires. So if you are the $25,000 fulfillment kind of person, don't follow the $25 million game plan, nor vice versa. If you need the bigger, you want to build an empire, you want 100 employees, you want to play that game, great. Don't follow the game plan of somebody else who doesn't need all that stuff. So there isn't any universal rule or set of rules for success in business, in this kind of business. Now, if we're talking about like a Subway franchise, McDonald's, yeah, of course. There's a clear, defined, tangible system. You just follow the flow. You put $250,000, maybe $500,000, or whatever the franchise fee is up front, and then you just follow the system. You take yourself out of it. You don't need to be creative with the Subway franchise. You need to be not creative with the Subway franchise, because they have all the systems and strategies down. You're basically buying a well-oiled machine that spits money out the other side. But that's not what most of us are doing. We're trying to build a business around our self, around our humanity, around our value, our skill set. So that's a different game. And there are elements of business that absolutely apply to both kinds of business and all business, from one end of the spectrum to the other. But there are some elements of a personal product business. I never really said that phrase, but when you are the product, there are some elements that are unique that don't apply to any of these other types of businesses. And that's because we as the human are in the middle of it. So it's not really about finding the business blueprint and then following it. It's about finding your business blueprint that has you at the center, that has you, your goals, your desires, your strengths, your traits, your unique ingredients at the center, and then what do we need to do to make this human's desires a reality? Let's build a business that supports this individual, unique set of circumstances. Almost nobody is doing that because we're trying to remove the thing that we don't trust the most, which is us. And if we build a business, a personal product business, without the person in there, the worst thing that we can actually do is succeed that way. The worst thing that we can do is succeed financially without us, if we're the product, in the business model and in the business plan, because at some point in time, we will have to confront ourselves. At some point in time, we will have to lean on our internal makeup to be resilient, to find the courage that we need. We will need to draw upon ourselves to keep the business going, to pick it back up when it has fallen down, to continue visioning and pushing and expanding. We need to be there. So if we need to be there, we need to be included in the business model, in the business plan, in all the strategies. And our uniqueness provides the most value for our businesses. So if we're going to land here anyway, providing you agree with me that you can only feel fulfilled in a personal product business if you are in the business in all ways. You can only find fulfillment there. And if you want to be fulfilled, then you have to be in it. So if you believe me, after 15 years of doing this work, hardcore, full-time, helping so many people do this, seeing what's worked, seeing what hasn't worked, this is core truth to me. If that's the kind of business that you want, and what's required for that business is to have you in it, then all the time that you spend out of your business trying to get the guaranteed money machines built is a waste of time, because you're going to have to come back to here anyway. So we need to be inside our business, and we need to understand the insides of our business. In order to do that, we need to understand ourselves, right? One of the things that is critical for self-development, personal development, is a concept that is basically whatever we want to control, we must understand first. We cannot control anything that we don't understand. So one of the reasons we don't trust ourselves is because we don't control our behavior. One of the main reasons we don't know how to control our behavior, we don't know how to stay focused, we don't know how to stay committed, we don't know how to count on ourselves to do the work that we know we are capable of doing. One of the reasons is because we don't understand ourselves. How can we control that which we don't understand? When we are the product, and we are the production team, and we are the visionaries, and we are the decision makers, then we need to understand all of those things in order to have control in the business. So that's like the conceptual foundation here of why this is so critical. Now let's talk about making a shift. At the time that we're talking here, it's shifting literally not just from a month to another month, and not just from a year to another year, from a decade to another decade, right? We are entering 2020. So now is the time to really start assessing, if we haven't already, what our 2020 vision is, which is great now, right? Because no matter what our eyesight is, we all have 2020 vision right now. But what most of us are doomed to continue when it comes to new periods of time, right? From one quarter to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 week to the next, 1 year to the next. What most of us are doomed to continue is this pattern of disappointment. Right? We have goals that generally sound similar. We want to make X number of dollars. We want to create products, or we want to do live events or online events or whatever those things are. But if we take all of our goals from 1 year to the next, they're pretty similar. And the reason that they're pretty similar is because we generally didn't fulfill these ones. We didn't fulfill all of the goals, or even a lot of the goals that we had last year. So it feels like in order to grow, we've got to go ahead and fulfill these goals. And sometimes we make slight shifts here and there, but we don't generally evolve to another level until we feel like this level's complete. And if we don't complete the goals that we have, then this time period will never feel complete. So what we're doing is we've just created this, what I think is a pattern of disappointment for most people. And if we don't change what we're doing, then we can't change what we're getting. So here's my framework for 2020, let's say, that I will, or it really applies to anything, but we'll put it in the context of a brand new year, brand new decade. My framework for making 2020 the most amazing year in your business and your life in the reverse order is this. Number one, you got to get real. You have to assess what 2019 was. Assess your accomplishments, assess your lack of accomplishments, whether you put the word failure on it or opportunities or what have you. Assess where you didn't hit the goals. Assess where you didn't achieve what you wanted to achieve. And be real. Don't make excuses. This is not a time for justification. This isn't finding blame. This is just, this is what happened and this is what didn't happen. At the beginning of the year, I wanted this to happen. It happened. At the beginning of the year, I wanted this to happen. It didn't happen. We need a neutral, non-emotional assessment of what happened and what didn't happen, because we need to know what is. We need to know the state of the business right now. If we don't know that, similar to what I said, we can only control what we understand. If we don't know where our business really is right now, how are we going to do anything to improve it? We won't. Most of us don't want to take that assessment because we're not going to like it. We're not going to like looking at all the things that we did not accomplish. The reason most of us don't like the things that we didn't accomplish is because we pretend that our failures as performers or in business equal our failures as people. If we don't accomplish our goals, we think we're not valuable as people. So we essentially feel bad when the goals aren't hit. That emotional connection is tragically damaging for most humans, because we have to separate the achievement of our goals from the value we have as a person in order to fully commit to our goals. If our personal value and self-esteem and confidence is wrapped up in the achievement of our goals, the majority of us, and I'm saying like 98, 99% of us, will not fully commit to our goals, because our joy and happiness is at stake if we fail, and we don't want to fully commit and still fail. So we've got to separate who we are from what we do, and our value as a person from the achievements that we had in our business. One of the ways to do that is to assess everything. Just take a look. This is what happened. This is what didn't happen. This is what I wanted. This is what I produced. Some of us are going to be fortunate enough to realize I wanted this to happen and something much bigger happened, or something much more important happened. Awesome. And more of us are going to say, this is what I wanted to have happen, and I fell short pretty greatly. But it's important for us to continue to lean in to this discomfort that a lot of us have between our production and our value in order for us to release ourselves to full commitment. That's what very few people have. So the first step is to assess truthfully, without hiding, without embellishing, without blaming, without being devastated. Assess truthfully where we are, what we accomplished in 2019. Next, Step 2 is to create the vision for 2020. What's your 2020 vision? We got to create new targets. My suggestion is, if you have targets from last year that you didn't accomplish, my suggestion for most people with most goals is to change the goal. But that doesn't necessarily mean foundationally change the goal. It means just change the target a little bit. So for instance, let's say your goal was to be 20% profitable in your business and you didn't hit that goal. And let's say your business wasn't profitable at all. My advice would be, don't keep the 20% profitability goal because you just failed on that one. And even though intellectually, all the things that I just said a few minutes ago are important for us to detach who we are from what we produce, the brain creates these connections all the time. And here's one thing the brain doesn't like to do. Now, the brain does not like to fail, right? We don't like to fail. Our self-esteem feels like it's at stake. Our ego, our self-image is at stake. So nobody enjoys failing, the process of failing, that I know at least. So the brain doesn't want to fail. The brain really doesn't want to re-fail at a goal. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people are afraid of relationships, because the last relationship they were in was a failure. And if they look to the side, the one before that one was a failure. And the one before that one was a failure. So if you have a bunch of failures in the past, one of the things that we don't enjoy doing is to sign up to re-fail about the same thing that we just failed on. So my advice would be, don't choose 20% profitability, make it 21% or 18%, depending on where you want to go. But here's the thing, you didn't fail last year at 21%, you failed last year at 20%. Sometimes just a slight shift like that gives the brain hope, because now we're focused on something new. We're not re-failing. You can't re-fail at a target you've never shot at before. So most of the time, for most of the people, most of the goals will be able to be reframed a little bit like that. And that's important for us to have a sense of newness so that we don't just drag the past failures into the future. Because if we do that, we're going to drag our past beliefs into the future. We're going to drag our past emotions into the future. We want to give a clean cut. And December 31st, 2019, when it's over, it's over. We want to cut the cord on 2019, and we want to look forward to a brand new 2020. And we can do that every single day. We can do it every hour if we really want to get micro with this. We can do it decades. We can do it with months. We can do it with relationships. We can do it with businesses if we've done multiple businesses. But we really have to cut the ties to the past so that we can be liberated and inspired and hopeful for the future. So what is your vision? And when you create your vision, don't create it inside the context of reality or possibility. Your vision is your vision. When you pull the dream pen out, don't ask your intellectual mind, which is focused on how this is going to work. Don't ask that part of your mind to dream for you. That's not the dreaming department. That's basically the strategy department, which turns down to the shutdown department, which turns into the shutdown department for many of us. We have a big goal. This strategic mind, the intellect immediately goes, well, I don't know how to do that, so shut that goal down. And you think about how many times we have visions. Sometimes they come to us in our sleep in the form of a dream that we're afraid to go after simply because we don't know how we're going to get there. And that's a misunderstanding of dream production. That's a misunderstanding of how humans do amazing things. I've never heard of a story about anybody who's done anything significant that knew the how before the what. that knew the how before the why, or that demanded of themselves to know the how before they allowed themselves to have the what and the why. But our intellectual brain, which is predominantly committed to avoiding failure, which means it's predominantly committed to avoiding risk, which means it's predominantly committed to new actions, which means we are perpetually restricted to old actions, which means we are perpetually contained inside of our old results. That's the entity that so many of us are putting in charge when we say, here, dream for me for the new future. Okay, well, what that means is I'm going to allow you to consider only the goals that will fit into last year's comfort zone, last year's behavior plans, recipes, strategies. I'll give you visions that are comfortable according to last year. Well, if last year you didn't get your goals, what kind of visions can you have? Or if last year you did get your goals, but you're still setting goals inside the construct or confinements rather of last year's container, then how can you grow to something significant? But we allow ourselves to be restricted by the how because we're so afraid to fail. When it's time to paint a vision, how does not get a voice. Whether it's realistic or not, does not get a voice. You take yourself into the dream room and you dream. This is not the time to brainstorm strategies. It's not the time to assess whether you can do it or not. It's not the time to start putting the puzzle pieces together and think about how are we going to implement this? How are we going to create it? What new people do we need on our team? This is not the time. That's a separate component that needs to come after the vision. So what is it that you want to create? If you had no confines, if you had no restrictions, what does your heart want to experience this year? Don't you dare let the restrictions of your intellect constrict the dreaming of your heart. It's our heart that allows us to experience life. It's not our intellect. Our intellect is fantastic at stroking our ego and giving us this perception of intelligence. Intelligence is not what humans crave. Intelligence is not what our soul is searching for in terms of our experience on this planet, to be intelligent. A lot of people that want to be intelligent only want to be intelligent because they don't want to be stupid. And the reason they don't want to be stupid is because if they feel stupid, the experience that they have on this planet isn't what they want. So again, it comes back to the heart. What will allow you to experience what you want on this planet? That's the dreaming phase. What is it that you want to produce? What is it that you want to create? So that 365 days later, when it's time to look back on 2020, what is it that you want to have accomplished? And I'm going to ask you a different goal, a different question. What will you regret if you don't accomplish? That's coming from a different perspective. If I look back on the year 2020, what are the things that I will regret not accomplishing? That will touch a piece of your emotion that your visioning probably won't. What are the goals that you want to create? What are the tangible measurables that you want to create? And I'm not saying that either one of them, this isn't an either or. Just ask the regret question also. And I would ask it second. Allow yourself to come up with the visions and then ask yourself, what would you regret? And sometimes what will happen is you might have a list of 10 things that you want to create this year, and then you filter it through what would I regret if I don't, and 3 of them might jump out at you. And then those are the things that you put as much of your time and energy and money and all the resources that you can into creating, because those are the things you'll regret if you don't. Or you might have that list of 10, you ask yourself the regret question, and you might come up with 1 or 5 things that aren't even on that list. Or you might have a combination. Some things might be highlighted and some things might come to you that are not on that list. But we have to get our heart involved. We have to get our soul involved. We need to tap into the elements inside of us, the resource inside of us that has the power to overcome the intellectual obstacles. Our intellectual dreams doesn't have the power, our intellect itself, and our dreams don't have the power to overcome the intellectual obstacles. But our heart does, our desire does, our conviction does. So what are your convictions for the new year? That's the main question. Not what are your wishes, what are your preferences, what are your convictions for the new year? And we take those convictions and then we turn them into commitments by focusing on the third step, which is your recipe. So now we have a new vision. What's the recipe that will produce that vision? This is so critical. The separation of results and recipe. So what most people are doing is they're putting up a target that's tangible. I want to make $50,000, $100,000, $10 million, whatever. And then they just keep wishing for that goal. And they might take some actions toward that goal. They might do affirmations. They might plug into certain things. They might kind of, dilly-dally and wish-wash, or be wishy-washy rather. That's not going to produce the goal. Wanting a goal will not produce the goal. Deserving the goal will not produce the goal. Wishing will not produce the goal. Throwing a tantrum because you've never gotten that goal and you should have gotten that goal by now will not produce the goal. Self-abuse will not produce the goal. Only the right recipe will produce the goal. That's it. When it comes to achievements, your recipes don't care about how bad you want something. Your recipes produce whatever the recipe is designed to produce. That's why we need to focus on recipes rather than results for almost all of us. There is a small amount of people, and I'm talking 2 or 3%, who can focus on the goal, and then they will just be like a bulldog chasing a bone. They will do whatever they need to do to get the goal. That's very, very rare. But those are a lot of the people that have the microphones, and those are a lot of the stories that we hear a lot. So because that's the perpetual narrative we hear, we think that's the way to do it, when that's actually only the way to do it for a tiny amount of people. The majority of us cannot just focus on a tangible goal and go after it. We need to back it down into a recipe. We have to. Because we just got too much emotional scar tissue toward the failure from our past, maybe. We've got too much uncertainty about how we're going to get there. We've got too much anxiety around what it means if we get the goal or if we don't get the goal. A lot of us have a lot of fear of success. So even getting the goal is bad. Not only is it bad, for a lot of us, getting the goal is worse than not getting the goal. So when we focus on tangible achievements, it will shut almost all of us down. That's the reality that I've learned after all these years in personal development. It will shut nearly all of us down. But most of us think there's one way to get goals, and if we're not getting our goals following that recipe, well, then we must be wrong. We must be the problem. In reality, you're not the problem. The recipe is the problem. You're following somebody else's recipe and you're getting irritated because you're not like them. And that's not discrediting their recipe. Their recipe is absolutely perfect for everybody that it works for. And it won't work for most people. No recipe will work for most people. That's just the nature of individual humans, right? So we've got to create the recipe that will produce the results as best we can tell. And just like we forgave ourselves for not achieving those goals, one of the most powerful things we can do is pre-forgive ourselves for not achieving our goals in the future. But one of the things that our souls have a really hard time forgiving ourselves for is not trying. We can forgive ourselves for not achieving, but we can't forgive ourselves for not trying if that's a value of ours. And I think it is for just about all of us. We want to know what we're made of. We came here on this planet for a purpose. We want to find out what we can accomplish. The only way to do that is to try. So what's interesting is that the thing that most humans are afraid of is failing. But the thing that most humans regret is not trying. That's a problem. Because trying will lead to failing. So we need to understand ourselves, as I was saying earlier, and just check in. What are we more committed to? Are we more committed to a life of not failing, or are we more committed to a life of trying? If we're more committed to a life of not failing, then we will be more committed to a life of not trying, a life of not knowing, a life of not growing. We've got to get this in motion. We just posted this on social media today. If you're not implementing, you're not learning. If you're not learning, you're not growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. That's what I believe when it comes to human personal development. So we need to ask ourselves, what are we more committed to? The avoidance of rejection or the avoidance of regret? The most successful people I know are way more driven by the fear of regret than they are by the fear of rejection. Our intellect is afraid of rejection. Our heart is afraid of regret. So essentially, we're asking ourselves, who are we more aligned with and who are we more committed to? Our intellect or our soul? Our head or our heart? If we're more committed to our heart, then we need to create the recipe that will, as best we can tell, produce the results that we're wanting, then forgive ourselves for not achieving those results. That's a way to detach, like I was saying before, and then just focus on the recipe. And three things will happen if you follow the recipe. It will either underproduce, exactly produce, or overproduce whatever the results that you built the recipe for. Those are the only three options. Underproduce, exactly produce, or overproduce. All of them are okay. Obviously, the overproduction of our results, if you get more out of the recipe than you thought you would, that's fantastic. Exactly producing the results, that's fantastic. Underproducing the results, that's fantastic. Because you actually learn a lot more lessons in not achieving the targets that your recipe was built for. You actually learn a lot more lessons as a human. You learn a lot more lessons in the strategy of where you ultimately want to go. You learn a lot of lessons about what you actually want in life. So the underproduction, in other words, the failure, is actually more valuable to the human than hitting the goal or exceeding the goal. But we have to pre-forgive and detach ourselves for not achieving the outcomes in order for us to fully commit to the recipe. Now, sometimes the recipe will take some studying. Sometimes you need to hire a coach. You need to join a mastermind group. You need to do some research. You need to study the market. Sometimes the recipe is not immediately known to you. And you know what I would say? The next time the recipe is immediately known to you, you better throw it away, because the only way the recipe can be known is if you're repeating something that you've already accomplished. If you're going after a goal that you've never achieved before, you cannot know the recipe. But one of the reasons that most of us don't give ourselves the permission to go after and commit 100% to the goals is because we don't know the recipe. We can't know the recipe to a goal worth having. So just think about how ridiculous that is. The reason we hold ourselves back is impossible to have unless you're interested in just repeating the past. So you will have to create a recipe for your new vision with a little bit of research, with hiring of coaches. This is one of the things that most people don't do enough of, hiring coaches that are going to help them achieve the results or come up with the recipe and the strategies, or help them stick to the recipe and the strategies. The next human that creates their wildest dreams on their own will be the first. We just don't have it in our brain to get the most out of ourselves. But most of us are not willing to invest energy or time or money into the ingredients that we need to get the results we've never gotten until we get the results. Therefore, we don't need the thing. People are like, okay, I know I need a coach, but I can't hire a coach until I make the money. But you can't make the money until you get out of your way, which is what coaching can do. So if you've already proven to yourself that you're not creating the results that you want, if that's already been proven to you, the worst thing you can do is repeat that recipe. You have to put in different ingredients if you're going to produce a different outcome. You have to. And I think a lot of people, it's not that people lack the resources to hire coaches, to hire teams, to create the strategies they want. It's not that they lack the resources, they lack the resourcefulness. If you want it bad enough, you'll find it. You'll find the money, you'll find the time, you'll find the creative possibilities, opportunities. If you want it bad enough, you'll find a way. Most people don't want it bad enough, or they really haven't touched why they want that thing bad enough. Because when you do, my experience personally and with so many of my clients, when you touch that thing that you were made for, when you touch that desire, when you identify and clarify and ignite your purpose, you can't not go for it. You can't not. So if you have goals that you are not fully committed to, what I'm telling you is you haven't touched your purpose. Or you haven't removed the things that right now are overpowering and smothering your purpose. That's just the nature of this work that I've experienced. So part of the recipe is going to be strategies. How do we create engagement? How do we build a community? How do we sell? How do we generate revenue? Which is an important part of business, obviously. But part of your recipe also has to be internal. How do I protect my most valuable asset? How do I keep myself inspired? How do I keep myself having this influx of new perspectives, new inputs, new visions that I don't currently have on my own? How do I protect my most valuable asset? A lot of people don't put themselves in that recipe. And at the beginning of this, I said, it's one of the biggest mistakes you can make is not having yourself in the business because you are the product. Not having yourself in the recipe is a huge mistake because you're the most important piece of this whole thing. So leaving the most important piece out of the game plan is not wise. Whatever that recipe is that you create with your best guess, because it's really just a guess. And we have to allow ourselves to guess. If we demand that we know the recipe to get the results, we are essentially demanding that we have the ability to predict the future. Not only do we have the ability to predict the future, we have the ability to predict the future for a massive amount of human beings. Try that. That ain't easy. That's not possible. You can't predict the future for one human. And if you have a business that serves humans, but you're demanding that you know exactly what you're going to do to create the results that you want, you're demanding that you not only can predict your next 365 days, but you can predict that for all of your clients too, and all of your prospects and all the people that you engage with on social media. You need to predict the buying patterns, the behaviors. Oh, also, you need to know what society is going to do over the next year. You need to know the platform changes. You need to know the algorithm changes. You need to know the new stuff that Zuckerberg decides about Facebook. You need to know all the things that YouTube is going to come out with over the next year. You need to know every element of society full of billions of humans in order for you to say, oh, I know how I'm going to get there. So we have to relieve ourselves from the demand to predict the future. We're just going to take a best guess. We're going to create the recipe. And then here's the key. The recipe is the new goal. The recipe is the new goal. So this is the fourth and final piece. The recipe is the new goal. Now you don't judge yourself on the outcomes that you're creating. You judge yourself on the recipes that you're following. And if the recipe doesn't produce the outcome that you wanted, that's okay. We already pre-forgave ourselves for that. And we're committed to learning the lessons that we need to learn so that we can adjust the recipe to produce the outcomes that we want. The recipe becomes the new goal. For all, I was going to say all of us, for almost all of us, recipes are more important than results. Recipes are more important than results to focus on. Recipes are more important than results to assess ourselves against. Recipes are more important than results to manage. You can't manage the results anyway, because the only way to produce results is to go through the activities which are inside the recipe. So the recipe needs to be what almost all of us focus on. And when we focus on our recipe, our goal is not the results, it's not the outcomes, it's not the predictability. Our goal over the long term is to produce habits. That's the goal. The goal is to produce habits. So if your goal was to lose weight, instead of your goal being, I'm going to lose 10 pounds, your goal should be, what's the recipe that a human should be following, this human should be following in order to probably produce a 10-pound weight release over the next 60 days or whatever the time frame is. Okay, the recipe is this amount of exercise, this kind of diet, this kind of learning or whatever it is that's important for your recipe, this kind of support socially and individually. And then how can I create a habit around my diet? And I don't necessarily mean to follow a diet like an Atkins diet or Jenny Craig diet. A diet is just whatever we eat. How can I create a habit around that? How can I create sleep patterns that set me up to get up in the morning and cook the kind of fuel that I need rather than pick it up on my way into the office? How can I create the habits that produce the environments that I need in order to make me as productive as I can be, in order to produce the content or the strategies and systems to have the appointments to close the deals or to get the clients or whatever it is you're wanting to do? How can I create the habits that will likely produce those outcomes? And then the habit becomes the goal. And here's the thing. You commit to the habits independent of whether you feel like doing it or not. And I know we hear versions of this, but if you understand how these all fit together, maybe it'll be easier to consume it and commit to it. You need to commit to the habits because the habit is supposed to lead to what it is that you want to create in the world over the next year. In this context, you need to create the habits because you're committed to the creation of habits. You're not committed to feeling like it. If one of your goals is to create an engaged, loyal community, let's say, maybe one of your recipes is to produce 50 videos that you put on YouTube, one video every week. One of the things that I suggest for most coaches, by the way, is to get content out there and to teach. If your goal is to produce 50 videos, then you create a recipe for the production of 50 videos. You create habits for the space to follow the recipe. And you turn the camera on because you committed to it. You don't turn the camera on because you feel like it. And you don't not turn the camera on if you feel doubts or if you feel fears or if you feel insecurity. If your goals don't induce fears and doubts and insecurities, they're not new goals. They're just old goals and old results that you're just comfortable with repeating. So a huge fallacy in personal development, especially in business and even more so in personal product businesses, a huge fallacy is I need to get over my fears in order to do the actions. And what I'll tell you, with zero doubt in my body, you need to do the actions and forget about the possibility of getting over the fears. I'm well over 15 years into this game. The last time I had fears and doubts, it's 12:57 my time right now, was about 90 minutes ago. 2.5 hours ago. 2.5 hours ago. Because I was doing something that I hadn't done before. I'm preparing for a TEDx rehearsal that we're gonna send in and hopefully get booked. So there's something on the line here. There's a possible rejection on the line or a possible approval on the line. And I'm basically trying to perform, and I go into a group that's my group. This isn't like a bunch of strangers. This is my group. They've already approved of me. They've paid for this program. And I start having all these doubts and fears. And you know what I told myself this morning? That TEDx is not that big of a deal. I was trying to talk myself out of doing this video. What I wanted to do is just cancel the video because I wasn't ready for it, because I didn't have all of the words down perfectly. But what I've learned over the last 15 years is that is part of the process. In learning and implementing and growing, that is part of the process. Getting over our doubts and fears is not a step before the actions. If you get rid of any doubts and fears, it will be a result of doing the actions. So you follow the recipe because you have a conviction for your purpose and your vision, not because you want to. The people that are desire-based motivated, meaning they're motivated to do things when they want to, achieve nothing of value on this planet. Maybe a harsh statement, but I believe that's to be true. And I'm not talking about doing the things that you love. I'm talking about doing the activities only when you feel like doing the activities. If those activities are a recipe for growth. If they're a recipe for growth, you've got to be committed independent of your desire to do the work. Otherwise, all we will do is commit and cement our comfort zones. We'll never do anything outside of our comfort zones. And all that's going to produce is another version of last year, another version of the last relationship, another version of last month, just another version of the previous production. And whether that was good or bad, profitable or not, the next version should be some kind of an evolution if we're going to continue to grow, if we're going to continue to evolve. So let me try to repeat these 4 things as my cord comes undone. The first thing is to take an honest assessment, good and bad, what happened and what didn't happen last year. The second thing is to create the vision for this upcoming year. Allow your heart to create the vision. The third thing is to create the recipe that will likely produce the results that you want. And then the fourth thing is to focus on the recipe with the primary commitment being habits. How can I create the daily habits that will feed into the recipe that will likely produce the results? Your daily habits are what you should be focusing on, because that's the only thing you can actually control. And we have to understand a habit cannot be created in a moment. A habit can only be really noticed looking in the past. We recognize that we have a habit of doing things by noticing what we continue to do over and over and over again. So habits are only created with consistency and repetition. They're not created with intensity. They're not created with desire, and they're not created in a single moment. Focus on habits so that you can lay your head down every single night and as best you can say, I took the steps to make progress today in the commitment to my recipe. The results will be whatever they are. The recipe is all you can control. That's what I got for you, brother. Let me know what you think. Any questions you have, or if we're going to open it up to the crowd. I'm going to go get some water real quick. Real quick. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Oh, ha.
Now we got you.
Oh. You can hear me, but now I've shut off my visual.
Yeah, right. Now you
turned into rejoicing like, yeah, thank goodness. His visual is off. Awesome. No, Sean, that was amazing, man. We got comments in the comments saying awesome stuff. I mean, this was just awesome, man. The perspective and the mindset shifts that you really introduce, I think, are just phenomenal. And I know are phenomenal because we get the feedback from everyone that says, this is phenomenal. This is amazing. This is awesome. Yes, if anyone has questions, we can absolutely jump to a few of those. So go ahead and enter those in the chat. You won't be able to see them, but we'll be able to see them on our end. And we'll just take some quick questions. We do have another session that's starting. It is an on-demand session. So even though we're going over a little more in this session, as soon as you access that next session in your emails, when you access that page, since it's an on-demand section, you won't miss anything. So you are A-OK if you're still with us here in the session. And if you saw our behind the scenes earlier, which several of you commented on as well, commented positively on. So we appreciate that. So
I probably should have asked how long the session was supposed to be.
Hey, you know what? When Sean Smith sends me a message and says, hey, we want to be a part of your upcoming summit, we make a way. And we throw out all those rules of, oh, yeah, you only have an hour. And I think everyone, you can see why we just throw out all those rules. If Sean wants to talk the rest of the summit, hey, well, actually, we couldn't do that because we have some more lives, but as much time as you want, man. I think what you share is just so amazing. It's just so such a fresh perspective on things that is really needed, and it helps cut through all the clutter and minutia of the microwave society kind of mentality that we all have, or that many of us have, I should say. It's an important perspective, so that's just awesome.
And here's one of the critical components is control. So we can control the things that I was talking about. We can't control all the other stuff and all the predictions and all that. And we never, I rarely use universals, but we never fully commit to something we don't control. We have to have a sense of control. We can release the need to control, but we've got to have a sense of control for full commitment to take place. And I would say pretty much all the time, how we think it's going to look is not the way it's going to look. So we commit to all the things I was talking about, the recipes, the habits. And then like what a lot of people are afraid of is, what if I commit and I don't get what I want? I'm telling you right now, you're not going to get what you want. Like if you do, then something's wrong. You're playing too small, or unless you're not dealing with humans, right? So the reasons that so many people hold themselves back are actually part of the process. And that all revolves around control. What can we control and what can we expect? So we got to pull those internally as much as we can. Alicia said she has some dreaming to do.
Man, you know what? I was realizing that while you were talking, so I'm supposed to be over here moderating and everything. I actually switched to another screen and I just started typing so many notes, like 2 pages of notes. And then I was like, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to be moderating. So my bad on moderating, everybody. We're trying to catch up now. I've seen some of your questions and we've posted some of those. One of the questions of which is, Sean, can you go over those 4 steps again, just so people can write and jot those down real quick?
Yeah, I'll try. These are my notes. So Joe is asking, can we display on screen the 4 steps? There they are. You can get a little screenshot or something. And truthfully, I didn't know how many steps there were going to be until I scratched these together and it came out. So the 4 steps are: assess what the previous year was. Assess the wins and the losses, let's say. No, I wouldn't say losses, but we'll just call them wins and failures. And even though I generally don't invite using the word failure, sometimes it's important so that we can lean into the idea of failure rather than being afraid of it. So you're assessing what you accomplished and what you didn't accomplish with truth and reality. The second step is to dream. Come up with your 2020 vision. Come up with your vision for whatever the next phase is, the next time frame. If we're talking about a month or we're talking about a year, or a decade of your life or whatever. In this case, what's your 2020 vision? Dream without the restrictions of realism or the restrictions of strategy or the restrictions of guarantees and knowing how it's going to show up. You just dream. This is what I want to experience. The third step is you create the recipe that will likely, this is just your best guess, the recipe that will likely create those results that you ultimately want to create, your 2020 vision. And then step 4 is you focus on and commit to the recipe by creating habits. So we've got the past. We disconnect from the past by learning the lessons from it. That's something that I really didn't fully dive into. I don't even know if I did it very much. So let me give the 45-second version of this. With all the things that you didn't accomplish last year, if there are lessons to learn, then capture those. We didn't start our campaigns early enough, or I didn't hire the right people, or I fired my coach, or I didn't have a support system. Identify the missing components that led to missing some of those targets, because that's going to show up in the creation of the new recipe, right? So you want to learn from whatever you didn't create. So it's the creation of the habits that will lead to the recipe. I started to kind of put it into order conceptually. So first, we are separating ourselves from the past, but learning the lessons from next year. Then we are saying, or from last year, then we are saying, this is what I want to experience from our heart. This is what I want to experience next year. And then we incorporate our intellect and say, what recipe, with our best guess now, what recipe do we need to create in order to produce those results? And then step 4, with that recipe, what habits do I need to build in order to follow the recipe that will hopefully produce the results? So those are the different levels of dissection that we need to go to, because the habits are made up of individual activities, and that's what we can do on a daily basis. So we can't wake up tomorrow and drop 10 pounds. We can never drop 10 pounds unless you're going to cut off a limb. You can never in a moment drop 10 pounds. But in a moment, you can do 50 sit-ups. In a moment, you can eat a gluten-free meal, if that's part of your recipe. In a moment, you can go to the gym and do a workout. You can never, in a moment, create the results. But in a moment, you can do individual activities that turn into habits that are a part of the recipe that ultimately produce the results. So that's why we got to work backwards and focus on in the moment. What can I do right now in this moment? That's where our control lies.
Man. Oh, I love this. I love this talk, man. I love this perspective. I mean, this is really a powerful, powerful perspective. I've been a student and admirer of Sean's now for 5 years and have learned so much. I can tell you absolutely what he mentioned earlier about, definitely make sure you hire a coach. If you're looking for a coach, Sean Smith is definitely one to consider in the highest degree, because literally he has helped impact and change my life and many, many, many. In fact, we have several people from his tribe joining us here today. Many of our lives has had such a great impact. So this perspective, man, has just been amazing. I can't, I'm almost at a loss of words, and that is hard for me. That is really hard for me.
One of the things that causes that, actually, the loss of words, is simplicity. And one of the reasons that a lot of us dismiss what we should be focusing on is simplicity.
Yeah.
We think that the solutions need to be complicated because our experience of the problems feel complicated.
Yeah.
If the problems feel complicated, we think the solutions need to be complicated. And that's one of the reasons why we just search everywhere for all these complicated things. And the reality is habits win. Habits win. And one thing that I didn't say that I want to highlight is when you create the recipe, you will always produce what the recipe is designed for. You will never underproduce a recipe. You will never overproduce a recipe. Given the course of time, like a year, you will always produce only what the recipe can produce. And that's really important to know. So if it doesn't produce what you want, then we need to change the recipe. And habits are commanding. Here's what I mean by that. Our desires demand success. Our habits command success.
I love that.
The distinction between those two is only everything.
Yeah. Can you repeat that? That was powerful. Can you say that one more time?
Our desires, made up of our ego and our self-images and our beliefs and all those things, our desires demand results. We demand them of ourselves. This is the year that I'm going to do this. I'm going to affirm my way. I am going to shout it out from the mountaintops. I'm going to tell everybody that this is what I demand of myself. Demand doesn't mean anything. Recipes don't give a damn about a demand. Recipes are going to produce the recipe. You follow a chocolate chip recipe, but demand a lemon cake. The recipe don't give a damn what you're demanding. This recipe produces chocolate chip cookies. So you can demand all you want. I can only do what I can do. So our egos and our desires demand success. Our habits command success. And habits don't do any of the demanding. Habits aren't loud. Habits aren't energetic in nature, right? Like your habits, I don't mean to what I'm about to say might sound like I'm throwing shade, and I really don't. I'm really not. But, your habits are not going to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within and jumping up and down and going crazy for, 14 hours a day for 3 days straight. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It's just that's not where habits live. That's where the demand lives. That's where the motivation lives. That's where the raw energy lives. And there's a place for that too. But that's not what creates success. If you jump up and down and hit your power poses and do that every day for 365 days, you will be no further along from a results standpoint as you were when you started that practice. In the meantime, the person who commits to the habits will have created whatever the results that are being commanded by the recipe. So I want to make it really clear. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to events, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't get motivated and stuff like that, but that does not produce results. Right. Only activities produce results. Only habits create consistent activities that consistently produce results. And one of the things we want in business is predictable results. You can only have predictable results from predictable habits. I call them clockwork habits. You can only have predictable results from clockwork habits. Raw motivation will never produce predictable results. And even if it does produce a predictable result one time, we don't know if it's going to produce it next time. So going back and saying what you asked me to repeat, our desires demand success while our habits command success.
Man, I love that, man. I had to switch over to that screen and jot some of that down because I'm like, yeah, this is good. This is good. And I know for a fact I will be watching the replays to capture some more notes because this has just been absolutely amazing. I see everybody has some more stuff coming in, more questions coming in. We want to honor Sean's time because he is a super busy guy, but I have great news. Some of you have asked, what about part 3 of the 9 entrepreneurial laws? And I said, don't worry. Sean is still said he's going to commit to doing part 3. In fact, Sean is already committed to doing the January summit that we're having from the 28th of January to the 30th, 2020. And he's doing this. Get this, everybody. He's already doing one TEDx talk on the 29th. He's going to fly back from here and then come back and be with you guys. This guy is super dedicated to continue to give you our value.
TEDx stage, yeah, that would be cool.
Fresh off the TEDx stage, so yeah, he is committed to. I love that, man. We love your dedication, love your commitment, and love that you are continuing to bring so much value to everyone you come across. Are there any thoughts you want to leave everyone with? Just as they go into the new year, summing up your session, what's on your heart and mind?
Yeah, heart and mind, and that order is important. Mm-hmm. What's on my heart? Something's coming. There's 2 words that are wanting to be birthed together here in a second. So give me a moment. Let these form themselves. Be rigidly forgiving of yourself. Aggressive forgiveness. And be radically vulnerable. Radical vulnerability. That's one of the TEDx talks I want to do. It's not going to be this one, but radical vulnerability is what we need. We as individuals, business owners, speakers, coaches, personal product, businesses, whatever. We need to be radically vulnerable to power ourselves through all of the digital and emotional and societal turbulence that we have in the world. And it doesn't seem like vulnerability is what the answer is to turbulence. Mm-hmm. It seems like when things get turbulent, you should border everything up, right? You should board up all the windows and lock the doors. That's what most people do. And it's not what is required. In order to weather any kind of storm, radical vulnerability will get you through the storms that a boarded up set of windows and doors cannot. And it's what society is craving, radical vulnerability. They're craving realness. They're tired of being taken advantage of. They're tired of the fake promises. They're tired of being disappointed. They're tired of being sold pipe dreams. They're tired of following shortcuts. They want people to just be real with them. Be real personally, but be real with the content also. Our society is demanding vulnerability. Soon, I think and hope, our society will reject everything not real. As soon as that happens, then only the vulnerable will be left standing. Because we will stop buying any of the crap. And I'm speaking primarily inside of, the industry that I know and love, which is coaching, but personal development in general and our society in general. It's the way that we've been programmed. And so they are craving realness. They're craving connection. And there is no connection found in perfection. There's only connection found in imperfection. There's only connection found in our humanity. Nowadays, when people see something perfect, it creates more suspicion than trust. And yet so many people think they need to be perfect before they turn the video camera on. It's actually the exact opposite nowadays. So be rigidly forgiving of yourself. There's nothing in the past that you can change except your relationship to it. And your relationship to your past results will determine your future results. Because it will allow you to commit or it will prevent you from committing. And if you have a negative relationship to your previous results, you will not be allowed to fully commit in the future. So be rigidly and aggressively forgiving of yourself. Be radically vulnerable in the future. And what you can create and experience will blow your mind. Your mind cannot currently comprehend what you're capable of. If you put the heart in the driver's seat, really, you put the heart in the fuel tank and put the mind in the driver's seat, your mind can help you get where your heart is demanding to go. But too many times we've got the mind driving the car. We're trying to fuel the car with the mind and the intellect and the ego. That's why we're not getting anywhere. So allow your heart to dream. Put your intellect in charge of making those dreams come true. And don't settle for anything less.
Ooh, I love that. Ooh, I love that. Those of you who are new to Sean, I think you can see why we said you are in for a treat. And based on the comments, we know you all enjoyed it. We've enjoyed it. Sean, we just can't thank you enough for continuing to bless us and grace us with this knowledge and wisdom and your perspective that is just so needed in the world. And so happy to hear you're doing more TEDx's, a lot more Small Biz Better Summits. This is just amazing. Just more and more people, I'm so convinced more and more people need to hear your voice, your perspective, and everything that you bring to just making this world a better place. So we just can't thank you enough, man.
I appreciate that, brother. I'm glad to be here, and I'm an easy yes for anything that you're doing.
Oh, love it, man. All right. So everyone, thank you again so much for joining us this amazing session. The session that's going on right now, don't worry, it's an on-demand session. So the email notification that you have in your box, you click that, and when you click play, it'll play from the beginning. And yes, we do have several live Q&As later today for the Small Biz Better Summit, which are also coming up, and you'll get the emails for those as well. So we look forward to seeing you on a future session as well as a future summit. 2020, I know we all can't wait for 2020. We're excited. Sean's excited. And now you have some tools and some mindset shifts to possibly use going into 2020. So this is just absolutely amazing. So everyone, you'll get the email in your box on how to access those upcoming sessions. We're getting ready to sign off on this session. Thank you again so much, Sean. Thank you again so much, everybody, for staying and enjoying and commenting and interacting with us this entire time. Small Biz Better. We'll see you in the next session.
Take care, everyone.